Hello, everyone. This is Better Read Than Dead. We have your usual co-hosts. Comrade Iotor is not with us tonight, but in exchange, we have a comrade from Chicago, Carlo. Tonight, we're going to be talking about organizing, how to do it, issues that you may run across in the process of founding your cult or organization or whatever the fuck you end up doing. And I guess we could just dive right into it. So, what is an organization and how do we form one? Like, what is the purpose of getting a bunch of people together to do communism? Like, why can't you just read books, go out, be a one-person army? Like, why can't you do that?
Kind of antithetical to communism.
Kind of antithetical to communism. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, communism, community. It's about the masses, not the individual. It's like great men don't make history, the masses do. Sure, fucking Alexander conquered his empire or whatever, right? But he had a cook, right? He had soldiers, right?
Yeah. And he also had a bunch of generals that ended up fighting each other. One of which was the direct forepair of Cleopatra. But she can't be on the podcast on account of being dead for several thousands of years. She probably wouldn't have anything good to say anyways. Royalty generally doesn't. So
yeah. I'm sorry, but I would make a distinction right here between the type of organization that you're founding. Like we live in a society with two predominant classes and two predominant directions that a class struggle can go in. So there has to be a distinction between bourgeois and proletarian organizations. Whose class interest does your organization serve? And I think a revolutionary communist organization is functionally different from any other kind of organization because of the sort of relationship that it has to have with the people that it's working to build the revolution with. So I think within the question of like how to form an organization, there's an even more specific question, like how to form a revolutionary communist organization.
Yeah, you both have good points, definitely. Going off of Rook's point, an individual is like the weakest link in our society. An individual can't really do much by themselves. You require others to move in your daily life. You can't reproduce yourself as an individual, so it's important that we unite.
Well, you can't reproduce. We can't reproduce yourself as an individual yet. Who knows?
Yeah, we're working on it. And then in terms of like a revolutionary organization, that relationship to the ideology is crucial. It really differentiates us from these other mass organizations out here, or just like general one-issue organizations out that you see all the time. I don't want to name drop, but you know what I'm talking about. Like back in the 80s, there was Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That's a good example of a organization, but it was reactive, not reactionary, but like reactive to a single issue. They were trying to get the United States to change its laws around drunk driving.
Yeah, man, let's go back to that point that you made about individualism, because that's a really good point. It's no accident that the ruling class is pushing this whole I'ma do me, self-care, all this type of individualist shit. And they're so slick with it that they're voicing this stuff off as revolutionary, right? Like, oh yeah, if you want to go on a shopping spree at Saks Fifth Avenue, you can do it. Your ancestors picked cotton. Go and take the American Express Black Card and load up, rack up. That's self-care. That's the revolutionary, honey. Like, is it an accident that they're pushing this shit and they're telling people that this stuff is subversive and revolutionary?
Mm-hmm.
No, because they know that revolution, the idea of revolution, the idea of rebellion, the aesthetic of revolution and rebellion sells.
Mm-hmm.
That has credence with a lot of people, particularly millennials and Zoomers, because we grew up with what? Occupy Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
most of us were politicized by the uprising after the police murder of Brother Mike Brown, right? So they know that they can do good business on this stuff because most of the people participating in these rebellions, yeah, they've got issues with the police. They've got issues with police brutality. They may even have issues with the existence of something called the police. But these people are not, by and large, revolutionary communists, right? As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that anarchism, various strains of anarchism, have had more influence on the people that were actually out on the streets making these rebellions. So we as revolutionary communists have a lot of work to do in terms of popularizing our ideology and actually taking this trench of combat that is the streets, right? Not necessarily saying that we are at war with the anarchists, like a lot of more foolish Maoists would say, but the reactionaries have this concept called the free marketplace of ideas. Like you cannot make people believe in the ideology that you yourself profess by using buzzwords or marketing type language. Like what the fuck does the most up-to-date ideology mean? Like a regular person would say, okay, yeah, you all call yourselves the most up-to-date and you get all this blase, 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 but why ain't the shit succeeded anywhere yet, huh? That's what an average person would say. So we do have a lot of ideological preparation work to do.
But in terms of like actually forming an organization, I think for the most part, sort of rallying the most advanced like working class, like members of the masses that you can in a given area, like even if they're not all Maoists, even if they're not all communists, like if you can build kind of a foundation to work off of, I think the main thing is finding people who are within like driving distance of each other, and just kind of like say, you know, we need to do something about this, and like even if we don't all agree on everything, like we ought to at least see what we can do to work together. But I don't know. I wasn't here for the founding of this organization, so I don't know how all that went down. But
Picture Sicily, 1945.
But yeah, I would say that the most important thing is just kind of like getting people who are willing to work to make a change together in one place, and sort of like hammering out the ideological distinctions later.
Yeah. Some people would say that we shouldn't even focus on ideology at all. They want a big tent of ideas. I was in a big tent org. They don't work. They usually end up factionalizing and splitting and crumbling. So
yeah, I had my own experience.
Yeah,
sure.
There has to be some sort of ideological consistency. Not saying that we need to be dogmatists and beat people over the head with books, because that is the way to end up with a party of one, or maybe two if you're in a relationship. So it's a balance, right? You don't forsake ideological principles, but at the same time, you can be flexible with them. Lenin was a master of this. That's why the party that Lenin played a major role in founding, the Bolshevik Party, ended up conquering the bourgeoisie and the White Army and all those other people. Did you all know that Russia was literally invaded in the aftermath of World War I? Like the Americans were there, the Japanese were there, there were some Czechoslovakians there. There were all sorts of people. Like they were basically there at the behest of the White Army to help them take back Russia. And of course they lost. But like people were scared shitless of this. And the reason that the Bolsheviks won was not because of one great person, although Lenin was an organizational and political genius and also a tireless worker, but because they knew how to be flexible with their principles and they had iron discipline. Stalin, who I am by no means a huge fan of, said that without the iron discipline of the Bolshevik Party, they would not have succeeded. So does this mean that we need cult-type discipline like your comrades are little peaches and pawns on a chessboard that you move here and there. No, this is America. I mean, if you try to take away any aspect of a social life outside of politics from an American, you're not going to end up with that many members in your org. But
Yeah, and trying to like dictate an agreement rather than like debate and come to an agreement in its full course is not going to be as effective. You know, if you don't allow debate, you're not going to sift through those bad ideas and understand like where people are coming from in the first place.
yeah, not only is just like dictating to people, it's fucking wrong. Like Americans are never going to go for that shit. See, when you talk about organizing for revolution, you have to take into account the specific characteristics of the people that you're organizing, right? So what can we define as some of these specific characteristics of the American people? I mean, we may deny it. Like I call myself New African, but like American people, regardless of ethnic background or whatever, have sort of specific characteristics. Like what characteristic do Americans all share? Black, white, Asian American, Latino, what have you? Like what emotional or ideological principles do we tend to share?
Well, I mean, the focus on the individual,
Yeah,
like
individual.
for one. But
Like
that's
Americans,
from the founding, like the like Jeffersonian ideals of like the yeoman farmer or whatever, right? Like you can't no one can tell you what to do because there's all this land that you can sustain yourself on,
you hit it.
right?
You got it right there. Americans do not like being told what to do.
Exactly.
That goes for black people. That goes for Latinos. That goes for white people. That goes for Asian Americans. Like most of these people came here. Why? To escape these dictatorial ass regimes, right? Because they were being told what to do. Like some motherfucker can come in your house and go through your shit. And of course, that still happens here. But like it was like over there, it was different. They could come and beat the fuck out of you just because you practiced a different religion. Of course, that happened here. But like people came over here to try to escape that sort of shit. Of course, mine didn't have any choice. But I guess we're kind of tied into this shit now.
I mean, that's what it's marketed as, right?
Yeah.
The
Melting pot.
freedom, but it turns out the freedom is just like
The myth.
or like consumer freedom, right? You can
Like
Free trade.
you might not be able to like choose where you live or your schedule at work, but like you can choose what you buy.
Yeah. Arm and Hammer and Colgate.
Yeah, that myth kind of reminds me of manifest destiny type of attitude, you know, where they're so entitled in the belief that they can get what they want, you know, that they're entitled to be ruthless. And I think that because the bourgeois ideology has like won the culture war and ingrained itself in our culture for so long, like these things come tacit, you know, they come like without question to us.
Yeah, like that's the major factor. Like when I meet Europeans, like Germans, French people, British people, like they're like, oh, well, why doesn't the government take care of this, and this? Like that's not in America's makeup. We don't want the government taking care of shit for us, right? Essentially, we're a rebel people. Can we agree on that? We're rebels.
Rebels without a cause, mostly. Yeah.
I mean, like every ethnicity here has its favorite rebel. Like my people, we've got Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman. White people, they've got Jesse James, Bonnie and Clyde. Latinos, they've got Pancho Villa, who actually raided a city on the U.S. on the U.S. border, killed a shitload of people. Like every ethnicity here has its favorite rebel because essentially Americans are rebels. So taking that rebel spirit and the fact that Americans really don't like being told what to do, especially by the government, into account, like how can we go about discussing the formation of communist organizations? Like how do we account for that specific characteristic? Because you can't force shit on people who don't want it, right? Like it or not, we are never going to be a regimented system like the Chinese have. So how do we take that into account?
I think by appealing to like their best interests, you know. If you look historically speaking, like you ask the tribes of Gaul how this organization went for them when they were resisting empire. It's in our best interest to resist empire. We show them that organization results in victories. You know, I think here in Chicago they have a good example of when FTP Chicago got started. They went out to the park, and the park had these basketball courts with no nets, you know, and they were asking the people like, why is that? Why is that? Oh, well, the Park Service says that the nets, they took them down to prevent fighting. That doesn't make any sense.
So what they had,
No.
they still had the hoop there, right?
Yeah, they had the hoop, but no nets.
That doesn't make any sense. If you're playing basketball, you can play basketball on a hoop with no net.
Exactly. But the net actually like helps funnel the ball down so you don't have to run around, and it's nicer. It, you know, makes the court look better. So everyone was like, yeah, we don't understand the real reason. So FTP Chicago got together. They pushed this issue. They called the Park Service and had the whole community start calling in, you know, like a phone zap. And within a week, it was back. All the nets were back. And they did the same thing with the lights, because the lights were turning off to prevent fighting, you know, allegedly. And so they called them and had a phone zap, and they got the lights extended to like 10 p.m., you know. And it showed the people that, you know, just by a simple act of like all calling in at once, we have that power to get what we need.
Let's circle around back to that, because that organizational tactic, that's actually how the Black Panther Party started. People think that the Black Panther Party started by scaring the shit out of Ronald Reagan at the California State Capitol. No, you know what their first campaign was? Traffic light. There was this intersection in Oakland where there was no stop sign there. There was no traffic light.
Right.
And basically the cars would just barrel through, run over little kids, old ladies pushing groceries. It was a fucking dangerous situation. Mm-hmm. So Huey and Bobby, they were like, hey, we need to organize our people, because the white man, he don't give a fuck what's going on down here. We could all get hit and killed by cars. So they started agitating, and like FTP Chicago did, they organized the people for a basic increase in their quality of living. You need to put a traffic sign here so I don't have to worry about little Jimmy getting run over. And they did it.
Yeah, to interject real quick, I think a 10-year-old boy did get hit, and that was the impetus. Like that was the rallying cry, because it was a tragedy.
Yeah, they started out doing this grassroots stuff. The Denzel Dowell case, the sheriff's department in Contra Costa County, I believe, wherever Richmond is. You're more familiar with out there than I am. But sheriff's deputy shot this kid in the back several times. Mm-hmm. And the Panthers, they organized with the family, who was already activists, because your son laying in a pool of industrial waste, shot in the back several times, that shit will turn you into an activist. And they worked with Denzel Dowell's family for a resolution. Of course, then never really was one. Nobody went to jail. But that grassroots type of organizing. And the thing with communists in the United States that I've noticed is Mao had a saying, you're unequal to big tasks, but you refuse to do small tasks. And James Jacques Sales, Tibashana, said that if you're not capable of organizing, I don't know, something simple, a grocery delivery service, or if you're not capable of running the phones for a tenant organizing campaign, what the fuck makes you think that you're capable of having a gun and you're going around to somebody's community talking about we're patrolling? No, you're going to shoot somebody or you're going to shoot yourself. That's what you got to do, right? Because you're unequal to the big tasks. You have no training in weapons. You have no training in patrol.
Right.
You don't come from that sort of background. And at the same time, you think the smaller tasks that actually get you mass support are beneath you. So you're basically fucked both ways. You try to do the big shit, you don't know what you're doing, and you're probably going to end up in prison. And you refuse to do the small shit. So you're not a real organizer, right? If you think that way.
It's just adventurism.
It's adventurism. Well, at least some of the adventurers did shit. Like there was a group of third worldists in Denmark who were robbing banks and stuff and sending the money to the PFLP.
Oh yeah, Torkel Lausen's group.
The what?
Torkel Lausen's group. I don't know their name. I don't speak Danish or whatever.
Yeah, they blocking and something. I don't know. I don't speak those hinga dinga durgan languages either. but yeah, like some of the adventurers actually did shit. I read something that said that the RAF, the Waltami faction, in Germany, actually had like 1 in 10 people that were willing to shelter them if they were on the run. You know, of course, most of them ended up getting caught or dropping out of the movement. But and then you read, there's a book I recommend. It's called Strike One to Educate 100. It's about the communist movement in Italy in the 60s and 70s, the years of lead. Like they would literally just grab up, like say there was a shitty factory foreman, because Italy had these huge factories where they made Fiat and all these other things. And you were a shitty factory foreman that abused your workers, raping people, all that horrible shit. Like they would literally just grab your ass up and they tie you to the factory gate after beating the shit out of you. And they would put a sign around your neck, Cultural Revolution style, that said rapist or try to, I don't know, follow me home one night. Bullshit like that. And like thousands of workers would pass by this asshole and they would spit on him and they kick him and shit. And he'd be like, let me go, untie me. And the workers would be like, untie you? We're mad they didn't kill you. So to get support like that, to be able to do those types of actions, you have to start small, right? Like these groups started with study groups. They started with workers associations, which one of our comrades here in town has actually suggested. Like they started small, getting people together, talking about the issues, not just talking because it's nothing but a complaint circle then, but actually working to solve these problems, right? We're also joined by Comrade Iotor.
Hi, sorry that I couldn't be in here earlier, but yeah, I mean that I totally agree with everything you just said. Whenever we started off, like whenever we started off with the mass organization, we largely, based off of the Black Panthers breakfast program. Like we thought that their survival program or like their defense programs were a really good model, and we did a lot of like mutual aid stuff with homeless people. It's probably one of our most like effective programs, and we're currently working on expanding that type of like really grassroots full survival program and trying to help with other unions. But yeah, no, the Black Panther model is, like, in my opinion, probably one of the best ones, at least for a place like America.
Yeah. So we've basically covered all the ideological, boring bullshit, right? So there's a word that's thrown around a lot, right? Talking about cadre. What exactly is a cadre? The Chinese word is gandu, which means backbone personnel. So what is a cadre? And how do we train, identify, and prepare cadres?
I think we identify them from the most advanced segment of the population. Advanced to me means that they're not only politically aware, but they're active. They're engaged in a class struggle, and they know why they're doing it.
Yeah, let's circle around to this idea of advanced, right? Advanced does not mean that you've read more communist theory than anybody else, right? Like there's advanced people who don't even know who Mao Zedong was, but it's activity, right? That is the standard of proof of a communist. How active are you? How many people are you organizing? When shit happens in your neighborhood or shit happens at your job, do you just sit on your ass and do nothing? Or do you complain to a small circle of friends? Or do you actually do something about it, right?
I
Communism
do
is,
that, and then I do something about it.
yeah, communism is an ideology of action. We are activists. To be an activist, you have to be active. And no, making a Facebook post or sharing somebody's beg post or sharing somebody's Cash App does not make you an activist. It makes you a fundraiser, but not an activist. So yeah, cadres are identifiable by their activity. And of course, this is no excuse for having people be ignorant of theory. But I would prefer action and then education slowly in Maoist theory. Because if you just, if you just start out trying to teach people theory, but there's no action under their belt, you end up with what? A book club, right? So yeah, they're very sharp in theory, but they don't know how to do shit. They don't know how to talk to people.
I got a funny story about the first time I tried to unionize. I was in a coastal city in California, and people were getting excited. You know, I was going and making the rounds, talking about union, this, that, and one guy even starts to like, all right, hey, I'll reach out to these people, and we start to delegate tasks between the two of us. And I'm like, all right, yeah, let's meet up. We'll come up with a list and whatnot. And embarrassing for me though, I didn't know how like these meetings were supposed to go, and I've been a fan of like communist theory since I first picked it up. I was about like 19, so that reading that shit is normal for me. So I said, when he gets here, we're gonna go over the first section of Capital, just to like that'll be our political like through
Please
line.
tell me you got all these workers together and you dropped capital on them in the first meeting?
I know, yo, and no one came back.
I see why. I've read like 5 pages of that motherfucker and I closed it and I went to read a book on the Panthers.
They were very polite and they stayed for like an hour, but yeah, that ruined it, and I felt like super embarrassed, all red-faced after that, because I one, I must have looked like I was stunting on them, like trying to pull out this big ass book and recite all this shit. They were probably like, I don't even know this guy now, you know. They were like, where the fuck did this come from, you know?
Black people would have been like, okay, I see your big ass book. Now, where it say in there how we deal with the boss?
Whenever
I go to Bibles, black folks would be like, look, man, I go to Bible study on Sunday. I ain't doing it now.
when the first time that I led a political education with the mass org, we did Power Anywhere Where There's People by Huey P. Newton.
That's a good one.
I thought
that's by Fred Hampton, though.
Oh gosh, sorry, I am brain not working, head empty.
It's an easy mistake to make.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I think that whenever you introduce somebody to like political theory, it's probably best to do something like that. Like a speech from like a revolutionaries are often really good. Sorry, I'm around traffic. But or also one of the things that's been like the most effective I've found whenever like doing political education with people who have like very little experience with communism is beforehand, like before doing the session, kind of trying to get a feel for like what are the contradictions these people are experiencing the most, you know. In like people that I meet in a feminist philosophy class in college, then the first like political education that you do with those people is going to be something like intersectional and around like a gender and class. If it's people who like their big thing is around like Black liberation or the environment, then you do something like that. But for most working class people, I think probably the biggest one is going to be stuff like wages and like food and day to day. But I think it's really important to not only pick a text that like breaks it or that's like very accessible. Hampton does a phenomenal job, pretty well, like taking all the stuff that Mao said really well and then saying it really well again, but in like American talking way. And so I think that makes them really accessible. And like obviously the concepts in there are things that are really like matter to people. So that's something I highly recommend people do whenever you do like political education and stuff.
If it's one thing I hate, it's air in the conversation. Y'all never seen that movie, Your Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
a terrific movie. Love
One of
that.
my favorite movies.
I got beat up by a Bible salesman.
I play
Alright.
that song periodically. The one.
Yeah, the Soggy Bottom Boys. I am a man of blah, blah, blah.
I'm in
Alright.
a constant sorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, and that describes you
Isn't
perfectly.
it basically just the Odyssey?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Polytheist, or not polytheist, motherfucker with one eye and shit.
Cyclops.
Yeah, that was the racist guy, right? Racist
Yeah,
Cyclops.
the clan guy.
Yeah.
All right. Early 2000s Odyssey epics aside, back to the topic of our podcast. So, yeah, cadre is one that's ready to throw down, that's ready to do work, that's ready to educate themselves. These people are really, really rare, especially in the United States, because everybody's a special snowflake. Everybody's so valid. Any stupid shit you say is automatically valid. And if you say that what I'm saying is stupid shit, then I'm going to weaponize my identity against you, and I'm going to ostracize you, and I'm going to get you canceled and fired from your job. Okay, liberal impersonation over.
You're like if Jordan Peterson was black and gay and a Maoist.
But okay, so I would like to point out that I think cadre is something that takes training. It's not just something that you are like naturally necessarily. It's something that takes a certain level of practice and experience to cultivate. I would say that a cadre is defined by a higher standard of discipline and theoretical development, ideological development. And it's something that like it is possible for cadre to form, in a non-communist organization or like an eclectic communist organization. But definitely like one of the main roles of a party or organization of any type would be the cultivation of cadre, the taking people who are not trained to work at that level of discipline and like principle, and like training them to do so. So I would say that it's something that any up and coming organization, like that's going to be one of your main tasks. First in cultivating it in yourself, raising yourself to that standard, but then as an organization, like bringing more people in and raising them up to that standard as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Fish. Like you said, cadres are trained by the organization themselves, right? Like parties have cadre schools where people are not just inculcated in the values of the organization that they're joining voluntarily, but also where they're taught to do things like put together campaigns. If you're a party in armed struggle, they teach you the necessities of that. Variety of things. American organizations don't do these because American organizations are not really that organized.
One, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, one way that I found to be effective for actually like helping sort of generate cadre, if you will, is to sort of like once one person has a task figured out, then they sort of have like a buddy, if that makes sense, who goes and does it with them, and then they like sort of it's like an apprenticeship essentially. The example that I'm thinking of is that whenever like I've had somewhat more experience with like public speaking growing up. I used to be an evangelical, so that came with a lot of baggage. Some of it being evangelizing, and we were going around through like university getting signatures for the student union, and I sort of a comrade went with me, and I would sort of lead it. And he would sort of start talking more and more after a couple until eventually he would start leading them whenever like we went and started talking to somebody. And then after he got really comfortable, then him and another comrade went off separately, and I and another comrade went off. And we sort of like generated from there. So it's sort of like you can sort of help one person if you can help one other person become a cadre, who then also helps another person become a cadre, who then also helps another person become a cadre, then that's literally Communist Party being formed right there. So but also I think there's definitely you should try to like have a cultivated cadre school. There's also an organic element that you can kind of work through like that, which does not say that you shouldn't also have like a degree of formal training.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, oh, you have a PhD in cadre shit. And I'm firmly of the belief that cadres training, just like any other skill, is something that's cultivated over a lifetime. Like, there's no such thing as, oh, you've done all the mandatory training, you are a perfect cadre. Like, as dialectical materialists, we reject the idea of perfection, right? So there's never, ever going to be a perfect anything. But considering the fact that we're up against the most insidious and powerful empire in the history of humanity, in the history of the world, I think it would behoove us to get as close to perfection as possible, while realizing that 100% perfection is impossible.
I think one of the biggest reasons why it's so goddamn difficult to get people to become like cadre and active communists in America, at least right now, is that in other countries, like there's this sort of long-standing tradition of having to like get up and act in order to liberate yourself. Whereas in America, there's been democracy, quote unquote, for a while. There's this idea that you don't have to like do political tasks; you just have to vote, and the only thing that you have to do is just convince people to agree with you. That's the premise of a liberal democracy, and that's something a lot of people still have ingrained in their head. And with social media and stuff, that just perpetuates it. It makes you think that activism is expressing an opinion. It's holding all the right opinions. It's being the most correctest in the world, when the reality is that it's how well you're actually like taking action upon what you understand and developing what you understand in relation to your action. So I think like the thing that people have issue is like a revolution isn't just believing in communism. And it isn't just making lots of other people believe in communism. Obviously, that's important, but like a revolution is also learning how to organize a union, and a revolution is also like having the self-discipline to get up and like early enough to go and do the task that you need to do. It's learning how to organize as a group. It's learning how to take meeting minutes. It's also learning how to like help homeless people out of a hard time, and how to like do a lot of tasks. There's a lot of things that you have to actually learn how to do to be a revolutionary.
Yeah, in my experience as an organizer has been that a lot of people, they think that this shit is all fun and games. Oh, we go to the protest and we get seen and we get on the front page of the paper. Or look, yay, I get to throw a brick through the mayor's window. No, this is hard fucking work. Hard fucking work. Like, every spare moment that you have is probably going to be dedicated to something, whether it's a call with a tenant that's in the midst of a crisis, whether it is delivering something to a homeless encampment, whether it is talking to one of your comrades who may be feeling down. Like this is emotional labor. This is physical labor. And if you're not cut out for this labor, you should people leave. Like, man, I don't know. I'm not ready for this at this point. Like, that's perfectly fine. It's better to do that than to lie and be like, hey, yeah, all power to the revolution, yay, and then just ghost. Like, you have people like that too, right?
Right. Yeah, they can't commit to not just to a routine to themselves, but they can't commit to the organization. And an organization requires commitment.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's differentiated from a cult because a healthy organization allows space for you to have a personal life, right? Like, a cult demands total control, total subjection. There is no room for argument, right? Whereas in a proper, healthy Marxist-Leninist Maoist organization, or an organization led by Maoists, they argue too much, right? Like, democratic centralism is heavy on the democratic part. Some people say primarily centralism. When people say shit like that, primarily centralism or principally centralism, that means cult. So we're heavy on the democracy. And in democracy, people argue. So if you're in an organization where argument is not allowed, even if the argument is irritating as hell, annoying as hell, it is far better than to have that type of culture, a culture of lively debate and argument, as long as shit gets done, than one that demands total control and total agreement. And one of my main issues with my comrades is that they don't talk enough. Like, they just sit there, and not all of them, but some people are just like, they just sit there.
Looking at you with that fluoride stare.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Like, say something, anything.
That's the opposite of your criticism of me.
I mean, we're communists. We're supposed to talk. There's no such thing as communists talking too much, unless it gets in the way of action. Because some people talk to stall.
Mm-hmm.
But I encourage you to do a study of human nature. I like to consider myself a student of human nature. I mean, some people are naturally timid. Like, they don't like arguments. They don't like disagreements. But timidity is not, it can't be in communists. Because if you're talking about you want to topple the greatest and worst regime in the history of humanity, yet you're timid, you're too afraid to talk on the fucking telephone.
Yeah, hell no, we can't have any cowards around us. Communism is formed through struggle, you know? Proletarian life is formed through struggle. We are born into the struggle. You can't just run away, stick your head in the sand. You can try and see how well that works out for you. You know, you're going to end up like so many before you, fucking dead and broke. You know, we only have each other, and that requires struggle. That requires doing something uncomfortable occasionally, you know?
Exactly. So we talked enough about cadres, so let's talk about communist propaganda. How do we propagandize? Like, do we just write "Long live Presidente Gonzalo" on a retaining wall?
Works for me.
How many cadres have you got again?
Oh, ouch.
Apparently it don't. Well, maybe it makes you feel better about yourself.
I'm completely kidding. No, I prefer right now, like I'm working in a union, and what we do is have like a little news video, like 5-minute news video. We're talking about the issues in the union, but we're also trying to push anti-imperialist and proletarian feminist politics into the purview of like everyone who's watching, right? So we're talking about like, hey, we're in a service industry that moves cargo, right? We moved weapons recently. The screeners were talking about like we got bombs moving through our cargo, weapons, that sort of thing. So one of the things we're trying to promote for our contract coming up is that we don't move that stuff anymore. You know, exercising our political right to refuse
Not
and
just that,
arguing that.
not just that, but that shit is fucking dangerous. Have you ever heard
Oh
of the
yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Port Chicago disaster
Mm-mm.
out on the West Coast? Yeah, this was during World War II, and they were not keen on letting black people fight in World War II, which I find hilarious. You're fighting a war against fascism with a segregated army, but yeah, they had these black troops moving these heavy munitions and shit, shells, bombs, mines. Somebody dropped something, the whole fucking thing blew up. I think like 200 people were killed. That stuff is fucking dangerous. Y'all shouldn't be working with that stuff.
Well, right. I'm well aware because I was up to date on the 2020 Beirut explosion, in Lebanon. That killed, I think, over 200 people, probably close to 250 people, and devastated the Beirut's downtown. Like, still hasn't recovered. Thousands of injuries, billions of dollars of damage, and like this is the level of stuff that my workplace deals with. So yeah, it's a great argument. We've been trying to relate it to the workers in that way. But a lot of the workers, they come from colonized countries. They understand where these bombs are going and what they're going to do, and they care about the people. The thing is like we have um, I want to say a regular relationship with information around there. Like the corporation will tell you one thing on Monday, next day it's a different story, right? So everyone's all confused. Everyone's movements all jacked up because they're being told lies, essentially. So we're trying to set the record straight and tell it from a Maoist revolutionary perspective.
Yeah. I personally, at this stage, wouldn't hit too hard on the Maoism, because Maoism doesn't necessarily have the best rep in the United States at this point, thanks in part to our friends on the other side.
No, I agree, and we approach it from like an anti-imperialist, proletarian, feminist viewpoint.
Because a union is basically a mass organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in mass organizations, when you hit too hard on the communist point, and this is the same thing, like, and they weren't even going this hard in the 40s and the 50s, but a lot of communists got put out of the unions.
Right.
Like it was basically a government law. And
CIO kicked them all out, yeah.
Yeah, they got thrown out of the unions. And these were some, like the communists were usually the most hardworking members. Like that's generally like a well-trained communist. Like we will work our asses off if it's in the interest of the people. As a matter of fact, there was an American diplomat in Guatemala who was saying that, damn, it's such a shame that we can't work with the commies because they seem to be the only people that give a shit about what happens to this piss hole.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, there's reactionaries who are veterans of past struggles, and like Trotskyites, they've tried union entryism, like they're used to that stuff. So if these reactionaries that get wind of that, they'll associate you with communists that they've had bad interactions with in the past. I'm not saying hide your communism. Like if somebody asks you, hey man, who'd you vote for? Tell them I didn't vote. I'm a communist. Like that's how I engage with people in my workplace.
Yeah, I have a similar attitude, and I'm not like full 100% gung ho. Every word out of my mouth is a quote from Mao, but we will push things like we work with Chicago Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines, and they really want that Philippine Human Rights Act. So we're trying to get the union to like make that one of the things that they are trying to put up.
That actually segues into another question that we had for tonight. Like, how do we relate with other organizations? Because like people, I'm really sick of this whole left unity thing. Mao had a saying that unity for unity's sake is no unity at all because it's eventually going to collapse. Sandcastle built on the sand is obviously going to be washed away from the tide. But at the same time, we can't go around making enemies out of everybody, right? like leaving dead animals on people's porches or calling people all sorts of Maoist slurs or trying to fight people in public. Like that shit turns people off. So how do we maintain principled engagement with other organizations? And what you just brought up, how you've established work with CJERT on this issue of interest to millions of people, the Philippine Human Rights Act. I think that's the way to go. Like you've got the workers' movement, and you've got a mass organization of Filipino people and allies of the Filipino people, of course. So that's a really, really good segue into how to relate to other organizations. It has to be on the field of practice, right? Because we're never going to agree on ideology. Never. People are convinced through practice, right?
Well, yeah. That's why I think it's important to emphasize the slogan of tactical unity over left unity, right? Like there is no left. So let's be clear about that first. Like the left doesn't exist, not as a real thing. It's kind of just like a subculture. But tactical unity implies that it is being organized around a specific campaign or battle. So if you're engaging in tactical unity, that means you're working with other organizations to achieve a specific goal. And I think that's always well and good, especially like I think any unity has to be based in principle. Like if you're dealing with an unprincipled organization that is just out to kind of waver this way and that and just kind of make themselves feel good, like you're not going to accomplish anything no matter what kind of attempt at unity you might make. But if you're both principled, even if you disagree, if you think that like this campaign should succeed, this complex needs to be organized, you can certainly achieve at least a local level unity on the basis of a specific action. So I think tactical unity is what needs to be emphasized, and I think we can always work with other organizations if we can kind of principally agree on a course of action that we want to take together.
Yeah, I agree. Like you brought up an apartment complex. Organizing an apartment complex, that's going to require working with all different types of people. People such as church ladies, people such as maybe some type of liberals, social democrats. Doesn't matter what happened in Germany in 1919, right? Not to the people that live in that complex. It might matter to us because we're nerds or because we have a sense of history. But to the people who live in that complex, what matters is what? How are you going to get my fucking AC back on? How are you going to get these $5,000 worth of charges, and bullshit off of me? How can you help me now? I've got kids to feed. My car broke down. What the fuck is Rosa Luxemburg gonna do for me? So we have to keep that in mind when we go out and do this stuff, right? So in terms of how to relate, we argue for tactical unity or a unity based on practice. And how can we help the people? How can we serve the people? That's what we do all this stuff for, not for our own personal aggrandizement or to vindicate people who've been dead for 100 years or to avenge people who've been dead.
That's something I see a lot is the self-aggrandizement. Like I run into too many people who are in this leftist sphere who think they're going to be the next Lenin because they know how to write 100 goddamn pages of fucking drivel. Like everyone has had these thoughts before. You're not special. You're writing this fucking manifesto. You're not going to be.
Lenin wasn't even special. He was a short, bald Russian dude that wore a wrinkled suit, but he had a certain characteristics that allowed him to be the right person for the moment. That's why we remember his name. That's literally all. If it had been somebody else in his shoes, Lenin would have died a provincial lawyer in Siberia or somewhere.
Hmm. Yeah, they kept electing him, you know?
Yeah, until he got shot and had a stroke. But yeah, that's the thing. Like Maoists have a tendency for great man theory, especially some of our more Peruvian inspired comrades who can call people eagles of the party. And uh, there was an oath that the Communist Party of Peru had. And it was like, I swear personal devotion to President S. I would have stopped at personal devotion. Like, you do not swear personal allegiance and devotion to a motherfucker, right?
No,
No, of course not.
this is not D&D. This is the
No,
Goliath, you know,
your allegiance as a communist belongs to who?
the people.
Yes, you
I
work for
think it just circles back around to individualism and like kind of like that like classic hero fantasy.
Yeah, everybody wants to be the hero. Or if they're too scared to be the hero, they at least want to have some of the hero's aura rubbed off on them, right?
I also think one of the most important things you can do in activism, like, is, you know, I think deconstructing the great man theory is something that you kind of have to do with people. One, so that, you know, obviously, you know that none of these people are like above reproach or above criticism or anything, but also because realizing that history isn't moved by like a handful of really brilliant individuals, it's moved by everyday normal people choosing to act, is like a really important in getting everyday normal people to act. So I think like both on the one hand say, hey, you know, the reason the Russian Revolution succeeded isn't just because Lenin's a genius. It's because everyday factory workers and farmers in feudal Russia and the countries around it decided to take their life and the lives of their and their community into their own hands and act. So like the deconstruction of great man theory, it's not just about these people aren't just great. It's also that like you have the capacity to affect things. It's one of the most important things in like dismantling apathy, I think.
And I think that we organizationally have a really good culture of that. I remember I was arguing with Rook about something, and I quoted Mao, and Mao said, not Mao. See, bad dogmatic habit. I just said Mao said, Rook, who in no way resembles Mao Zedong. And after I dropped the Mao quote, the battle of quotations, and Rook was like, oh, wow, I'm taking life advice from a guy who didn't wash his genitals. And I found it hilarious. But like,
that's a really great point, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I could go into a long tirade on the insufficiency of healthcare and personal hygiene in pre-revolutionary China, but y'all don't want to hear that shit.
First of all, I think it was I think I wouldn't listen to insults from a man with unwashed genitals.
You see, how the fuck do you remember this shit?
Frankly, I'm just shocked that Panther was
sure.
arguing. I mean, I can't believe that. It sounds so out of character.
But yeah, mocking our theoreticians. Of course, not going ham on it, like not openly disrespecting people. But on the other hand, all these people are dead. Who cares? If they did something stupid and they fucked something up, should we be afraid of calling it a stupid, fucked up thing?
Right, our heroes were people.
Like, there's no mental gymnastics you can do to justify Mao sending weapons and money to people who wanted to stop the African liberation movement. Why? Because he wanted to get back at the Soviets? Come on, like how many people died because of that stupid ass, rightist ass decision? So yes, our leaders historically have done some dumb ass shit. No?
I really like.
Sorry.
You're good. I was gonna say I really like in intercommunalism what Huey P. Newton says about, and I know he's revisionary all that, but about Marxism and like the fact that Marx was a racist, where he says like Marx was a racist, and I'm not like a Marxist. I'm not like a person who just copies all of Marx's thought. I'm a dialectical materialist. Marx identified dialectical materialism, and the rest of his life like doesn't like touch that. And I think it's really important to keep in mind whenever like same thing basically applies with Mao Zedong. Like I wouldn't endorse him as a person necessarily. However, like the mass line and protracted people's war and like that type of stuff. There's philosophical political ideas that he helped develop and coin that are extremely useful frameworks, but it's not as if he's like a prophet or necessarily even like a hero.
Right. I think Dr. Newton was to Marx the way that Marx was to Hegel, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I still think the naming convention is just kind of a bad idea.
you're just jealous that there's no Rookism.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, like I think it's important to emphasize that like in spite of the name, like these individuals, like we don't discount their contributions theoretically, even practically, historically. But the thing is what attracted me to Maoism for one thing was not Mao. Like I didn't start reading Mao until I had already decided that I wanted to be a Maoist. But what attracted me to Maoism was the active Maoists in other countries, in the Philippines, in India. These were the communists that were like actually doing something. They were like applying theory to their countries, to their own situations. And so it's like, well, if they're doing something, like if they're active, like maybe they've got something right. And so, like to me, Maoism is like so much more than just like the writings of Mao. Like there's so much more. Just like theoretically, not to mention the history of the Maoist movement since like the early 90s, for instance. But yeah, like I think that it's important to emphasize that what we are endorsing specifically is like communists and communist actions, class struggle. Like it's not these particular people that we're venerating, but the actions of the masses that they were a part of. In terms of our own history, we have the legacy of like the Black Panthers to look back on.
The Black Panthers were an all-black group.
Yeah.
Right. Like I rock with the ideology for much the same reason. Like when I was a young fish, no pun intended, I was looking around and I was like, which ideology is going to make revolution now? That's what I'm concerned with. And I didn't know about India. I didn't know about the Philippines. I didn't know about Afghanistan. None of these groups, I didn't fucking know about any of that. I didn't know who the president was.
You did not know who the president of the United States was?
No, I seriously did not give a fuck at all.
You knew who he was, at least.
No, I didn't know the name. Like if you would have asked me to guess when I was 19, I would have guessed wrong. I promise you.
Oh, never watched the news?
No, hell no. But I got into Maoism because they were the ones who were in the community, who were talking about revolution and making it happen, or at least seemingly working towards it in a purposeful direction. Like all these other groups that were around, in the Bay Area, there were a lot of talk and not enough action for me,
I the main reason why I like work within a Maoist organization is basically because it's kind of like it seems like one of almost the only sane options that you really have, because like Leninism was tried and the Soviet Union became state capitalist, collapsed, formed Russia. Leninism,
so China.
What?
To be fair, so did China.
Yeah, I was about to say that China, but I mean Maoism is like a direct critique of that. Mao like Maoism is kind of the only, like in a lot of ways, like one of the only sane options, because in light of the fact that in China it became capitalist, like it clearly shows that you need something like different. And I think that Maoism with like the mass line and the protracted war or the protracted People's War, I think that those are like two obvious essential contributions to like the revolution. But like, yeah, I mean, overall, I don't have any particular affinity towards like the guy.
Young Mao was kind of hot though.
I mean, all revolutionaries are kind of hot.
Be quiet, you thirsty fuckers. This is not fucking better read than dead after dark. All right. Well, it is after dark, but we do not discuss raunchy material here. We are.
I won't get explicit.
We are good.
No, with that attitude, we don't.
We are good Puritans. We are good Christians. We are good Maoists.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So, what are the pitfalls that new organizers often fall into, and how to avoid them? I've got one.
Liberalism.
See, I was going to say impetuosity. Like we always want shit to happen right now. And when it doesn't happen right now, because the people move at a glacial pace, then we get depressed and we want to drop out and we want to stop organizing. We want to go back to our own little shitty little lives. So how do we combat that? And liberalism.
Shout out to the depressed homies.
But yeah, I would say that in terms of how we combat that, I think sort of setting realistic goals for ourselves is very important. Like we can't realistically expect to massively change anyone's lives, including our own, in a very short amount of time, not without a lot of preparation in advance. And so like just the process of like cultivating discipline in yourself, just like sharpening your principles, testing your dedication to the cause, like it's important to sort of maintain a view and like what you're working for, and no matter how demoralizing it might get, no matter how frustrating the pace of it might be, like you're always going to be willing to throw in 100%. Like I said, it takes time to get up to that, and I think just like any other kind of training, any other kind of exercise, you have to start somewhere and build up to it. But yeah, I think just sort of cultivating discipline, persevering in spite of whatever happens, learning from your losses. The main thing is like no matter how many times you fail, you just have to keep working at it. So that's what I would say is just a perseverance in spite of impetuosity.
How about tailism though? Like
what is tailism? Not everybody knows what tailism means.
How often do you see these new organizers who are just like, hey, this is where all the people's at? When I was back in Baltimore, I would see people just kind of trailing behind any big group of people, no matter what they were about, and trying to spit something that was completely different to what that group was even gathered for.
And then end up being isolated or being made to look like an ass.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should start a group that's literally called The Group, and its purpose is to get as many people together as possible.
Yes.
In today's meme poison culture, that shit would actually work.
It would.
Like,
I mean, if you can get 1,000 people to show up to Area 51 in September.
Yeah, and now shit was organized completely on the internet. And like another
Birds
thing.
aren't real. Like, that's the thing.
Huh?
That campaign, like, birds aren't real. Like, thousands of people showed up for that. Like, what the hell?
And that's the reason why, like, organizers dump on the internet so much. Yet, let's be real. I keep saying this. We're in the year 2022. Where are most workers spending their time when they get off work? Are they hanging out on the street corner waiting for the next issue of the Maoist newspaper to drop so that they could sneak it real sneaky like into their trench coat and then run back home and read it in secret before burning it? No, they're looking at TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all my fucking coworker does. Look at TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook Reels. Like, most of my coworkers are boomers. They still know how to work that shit. They're watching Netflix. Like, we are in the digital age. So we got to get with the times. And I don't care about your arguments. No. You just want to stick to old patterns that don't work. The CPUSA had newspapers out the ass. Why are we not living in the People's Republic of America? Because they failed. Because it didn't work. Because it didn't keep with the times.
I mean, yeah, it's best to use the medium you have.
Yeah, like that was a struggle over this podcast, right? Some people thought that it wouldn't work. But we get views. People listening to us.
Is TikTok even an authentic way to see what people are really thinking, though? I feel like a lot of it's a lot of it is infected with just like bourgeois ideology. It's just industry plant kind of shit, you know?
For sure.
You know, so I don't look at that and think like, I'm gathering social fucking information here, you know, I'm learning what the people think. No, I'm like, this is just another show, you know?
Yeah, it's like TikTok seems more like doom scrolly to me, right? It's just
I would be highly supportive of taking, for example, like clips out of this podcast that we think are particularly useful and posting them on TikTok or something.
I don't know how to
because
do that. It's giving me work to do.
I'm not saying that we should do it. I'm saying be highly supportive, all right? What I'm saying is that I do think that TikTok kind of is like a doom scroll that like grabs you by the soul and rips you further and further down the dopamine pipeline. And I think it would be an idea to like have actual like, hey, get out and do shit type content to sort of be like a life vest to throw into that doom scroll sinking pit to help people who are on TikTok doom scrolling stop being apathetic and act.
I don't know. I just use TikTok because there's nice cat videos on there that make me happy. And other cute little animals. That's all I watch it for.
Oh my god, I didn't even think that I could use TikTok to make a never-ending scroll of fish videos.
Panther watching cat videos, fish watching fish videos.
Fish are not
you guys
cute.
are really into this furry thing, huh?
Why would you watch fish?
So I gotta start watching.
Why would I watch fish?
One, fish do not have fur, and then two, fish are not cute. They're stupid animals that live in.
Also, birds are
the
pretty.
comments.
All right.
I think it's noteworthy.
To look at.
All right.
I was going to say that my partner, she said that like one of the main ways that she started getting educated about a lot of like major issues that are happening both in the news and in the world is from like actually smart people on TikTok going in on making it. So like again, it's kind of a brain parasite. But like I know of a lot of like Zoomers and stuff who like TikTok is one of their main ways of getting information. And I'm not endorsing that as like a good way to be your main way of getting information. But I think that it could be like something worth pursuing to like start getting people involved in the organization.
I mean, like in the Ukraine, that situation that's going over there, like Ukrainians were making TikTok videos of how to start up a fucking stolen Russian tank, or how to work an RPG. Like, it's the fucking ghetto over there.
It's a way of disseminating information.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So would
sure.
y'all agree that in the mass line, TikTok would be useful in helping us return a synthesized revolutionary line back to the people?
Under the
that's what I was thinking.
Under the auspices of an organization, yes, an organization that is actually coming to these decisions collectively. We're not going to be like Black Hammer, instructing their members to take off their clothes and pose on Instagram for likes and shares and money. because that's fucking horrible. Sexual exploitation of members, and I get sick just thinking about it. But at the same time, like Black Hammer is an example of an organization that did everything that you're not supposed to do, right? Like they had fucking public meetings on Zoom. Fucking J. Edgar Hoover's ghost who came in there, and they probably would have out. Yeah, they had public Zoom
How did they live that long?
Huh?
How did they live that long?
My grandma has a saying, God takes care of idiots and children. And a bunch of other stuff. Like they just did that stuff for clout and attention. We do this stuff for revolution. So if you want an example of what not to do, study them.
I think that's a really great example of another mistake that a lot of like little baby orgs can kind of do is have no conception of security culture and basically just snitch on themselves. Like I think having an understanding of what is and isn't a risk to like let out and making sure that like your members aren't just letting it out is like just really important.
Just go on Leftbook. Like they don't even have to look for information like they used to have to do years ago. Like they used to have to actually put shoes to pavement and actually go out and try to find out shit about you, right? Nowadays, you go on Leftbook, every motherfucker is live streaming and live posting their fucking nervous breakdowns and their mental health issues, their criminal problems. For one, nobody cares. Like none of these people on the internet are your friend. For two, you're just offering your fucking self up on a platter. They can arrest you, put you in a room, and be like, hey, we hear that you're a drug addict. How'd you like to do 15 years? Tell us everything you know about so-and-so, whose meeting you went to. Or they'll fucking do shit to you to make you have a breakdown. Like, these people are slick, and they do not care.
I don't think they won't, because I was just at a C-Chirp event where this dude got red tagged in the Philippines. But before that, he was here living in Chicago, and the FBI came and raided his place because they were giving support to the people in the Philippines. Not even necessarily an illegal group, just the fact that you're involved in international solidarity already puts a target on your back.
Yeah, and the MPA is technically defined as a terrorist organization. Of course, most idiots, they think that everything Filipino is tied to the MPA, which it isn't. But they'll still use it to make a case to put a terrorism charge on your ass. And people are so fucking quick to brag, or they're feeling a little ill, or they don't feel good, so they go on fucking Facebook and they make a public post. Or I go back to thinking about Ferguson. The dudes was out there, breaking in stores, stealing stuff, looting, because that's what you do when there's protests that turn into riots. The dumb motherfuckers got on Facebook holding up pictures of the shit that they had stole. And then they acted like they were being repressed by the state when they got arrested. No, you were repressed by your own stupidity.
Right. This is like some toxic masculine shit or some machismo or something like that, because I've talked to people who are like going on to Facebook saying, hey, here's how you can rip off Walmart and shit. And I'm like, you're on parole, bro. What are you doing? Yeah, you're posting pictures of guns you're not supposed to be holding. You're talking about all these stores you're ripping off. Oh, I don't fucking care. Throw another 5 at me. I could do that on my head. Like, all right. So that's nihilism and machismo, if you ask me.
I don't know. The smart criminals stay out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were in the mafia back in the day, when you went to prison, it was, for one, they drew heavy time at those people after RICO. And then for two, like, you were basically considered a fucking fool. Like, smart criminals don't get caught. So you're already a dumbass because you keep getting caught doing shit. And then you talk about you could do 5 years standing on your head. That's fucking 5 years of your life that you've wasted. And you think that you're hard for going to prison. No. You're somebody else's punk. You're the government's punk. That's all you are. Government property.
Also, even beyond just like the general don't be a giant like fucking idiot, obviously, like we've experienced like police following us and stuff before, like after like the homeless people who had charges who we helped out. like we've like had members be like pulled over by that same cop, like within a couple of days when they weren't like doing anything illegal and like having false charges on them. I've been like followed by police for like a long time before and had to like really like wiggle around. And it can be really important to like also keep an eye over your shoulder. And that's one thing, if you do stuff with a lot of homeless people, that you learn how to be hyper vigilant, and you learn how to like know when you're being watched and followed pretty quickly that way.
Yeah, really good point. And it's really important for organizations to practice security culture. And security culture is not like, people watch too many fucking movies and think it's all Catch Me If You Can, James Bond shit. No, most of it is just about not being a fucking idiot, right? Like that when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, the dumb motherfuckers were on the internet talking about oh, if you want to go camping over in Illinois, I'll take you. And nobody has to know. Wink, wink, not like the people know what you fucking talk about. Cops are dumb, but they're not dumb, okay? So, yeah, like, people think this shit is a game. But if you go too far into it, then you wall yourself off, right? That's why Lenin talked about the division between legal and illegal work. Both are necessary. Some might even be primary at one point or the other. But if you focus on exclusively legal work, you end up being a wing of the Democrats, even if you don't realize that's what you are. If you focus on the illegal work, you're going to get shot and killed horribly. Unless you know what you're doing, which most communists unfortunately don't. So it's a balance, right?
One thing that Kawasi Balagoon talks a lot about in like Where to Begin in a lot of his prison letters.
Some good books.
Well, that's one of my favorites. I think I've probably read it like 4 times now. But well, sorry, what was I just saying? Yes. So one of the things that he talks about a lot is like the separation between the clandestine part of the movement and like the public part of the movement, and that they like, you know, necessarily need to be like ideologically united. But he was very much like stressed trying to separate the people who are like actively doing direct action that could get you charged from like the public movement, so that you know, cops can't just pull up to a protest, pick out everybody, and pull them aside.
Let's see. So let's wrap it up. What makes organizations succeed and fail, and how can we define both?
I think one of the biggest ways is that an organization can succeed or fail is how well it unites with the masses and draws from the masses. One of the biggest mistakes that we made whenever we started was we didn't do like a social investigation or any mass line work or anything like that. And so what I would recommend is that you actually like go out with a notebook, talk to people, write down things they think are an issue. And then every time somebody else mentions that same thing, put another check mark on it to see like what's the thing people are having the most issues with, and then trying to organize. Then you're trying to like organize from there. So I think I think one of the biggest things is how well you actually like have an understanding of the wants and needs and capabilities of the people that you're organizing around.
I've been a part of a couple failed organizations, and just to give it a quick summary, don't jump the gun, but put politics in command. Don't presume unity. Do not jump that gun, because it's gonna go off. You're gonna get fucking shot, and it's not gonna be pretty. If you presume that everyone's on the same page because they're using the same rhetoric as you, and you know, everyone should understand the position in history we're in and the necessity for revolution, you're wrong. People don't understand that shit at all. You got to work on that. You got to work on what people are ready for, even in terms of like conversation, you know, and work on your relatability. You're not going to get along with everybody. Understand your group, and quit trying to fit in if you're a square piece in a circle spot, you know?
All right. Rook, what do you think? What makes organizations succeed and fail?
Well, I'd agree that it's entirely predicated on being subsumed within the masses.
Assumed within?
Yeah,
Now, Lenin had a saying, we realize that it's important to be among the masses, but at the same time, we do not go down to the level of the air quote common masses. So we should never ever subsume and lose our communist identity in the masses. But at the same time, we also have to be part of them. We have to be connected to them. Again, it's a balancing act, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean.
Like if you're
you
among a
can't-
bunch of people and they're making racist jokes, you don't make racist jokes with them to fit in.
Correct. But that's not what I mean by subsume ourselves within the mass. It's not what I mean. I mean, we have to raise ourselves ideologically and through practice, with discipline, and then go back to the masses. Like, you can't speak above people. You can't talk down to people like when you're among people, right? You can't be prescriptive. We were talking about this earlier. Like, Americans don't like being told what to do.
Really good. Fish.
Okay, so like how can organizations what is it? What makes an organization succeed and fail? To echo what Iotor and Rook were saying, like definitely, I think the most important thing is sort of centering the masses, like understanding that none of the things that we want to happen are going to happen without their willing participation, right? And that doesn't mean we just like herd them like sheep, you know, like we have to like very patiently like go and interact with them like on a daily basis, you know, people in your workplace, people in your neighborhood, people that you see at the grocery store, you know, like people in your community, just like talking about the situation, like identifying who is suffering the most under the current situation, you know, who needs help, like what can we do, and mobilizing people around those specific issues. Like anything good that we accomplish is going to come through the masses, and so the connection with the masses is just a ultimate priority. But yeah, as far as failure, yeah, like there's a lot of ways to fail. Like definitely getting detached from the masses in any way can cause you to fail. But then just like not being prepared for intense struggle, allowing yourself to be infiltrated, allowing yourself to be imprisoned or broken up with drama or politics. Like there's going to be 100 different ways that they're going to try and come after any kind of semi-successful organization. And that's where, like, as we mentioned before, you know, discipline and principle, like it's important to recognize like what we're doing and the fact that it's going to cost us a lot. It's going to be intense. It's going to be exhausting, and we just have to be willing to accept that. So in terms of what how they succeed or fail, like anything that you do, any success you have is going to be through the masses, and failure is just going to be not adequately preparing yourself for the struggle that is going to follow.
That wasn't as doomery as I thought it would be.
Also, you're going to fail a lot, and that's a lesson, and it's inevitable. And take it as a lesson. Don't take it as a defeat.
Right.
Try to think of it like a science experiment.
Yeah, a science experiment with potentially fatal results.
Yeah, that happens all the time. There's a lot of noxious gases.
Yeah, I made a little volcano in like 4th grade. It was fun. Carlo, you got something to say?
Yeah, real quick. Earlier, we talked about Rock Against Fascism. I penned an article in People's Voice News talking about the fascist music scene, highlighting a show that was in Chicagoland. In a kind of a response to that, but also in an effort to create a mass organization, we're putting on a show August 21st. Doors will be at 3 p.m. If you want to know the address, you give us an email at rafchai1312 at protonmail.com. Give us an email like a week before. We're trying to be secure about this because it is an anti-fascist event. It'll be a benefit show for the political prisoners in the Philippines who were fighting back against the Marcos dictatorship. So that's in collaboration with C-Chirp. I think that this is going to be a good potential for my small collective here, that's just kind of getting together to do some social investigation and sift through that advanced segment and start to make stuff happen.
All right. Well, that is a wrap, everyone. We try not to make these things too long because we don't like putting people to sleep. So, catch you next week.